Hey, Canada, more proof that the justice system in this country, well, it's only there to benefit those who are part of the establishment or ruling elite, or those who have enough money to buy their freedom, to buy their justice. Headline, CBC. Bathurst officers charged in fatal shooting will learn their fate on Friday. Manslaughter charges were dropped in Michel Vigneault case for lack of evidence, but Crown wants that reversed. It's disturbing stuff. A New Brunswick Court of Queen's Bench Justice will rule Friday on whether to reverse a lower court decision not to try 2 Bathurst police officers in the shooting death of Michel Vigneault. The 51-year-old Trackety businessman was shot and killed in a Via Rail parking lot in Bathurst after getting off a train from Montreal in January of 2015. Police were attempting to arrest Vigneault, acting on a tip that he was carrying a load of drugs. A tip. An anonymous tip, no doubt. That tip proved to be false, so the guy was completely innocent and just getting off the train. Charges of manslaughter against Constables Patrick Bulger, 38, and Matthew Boudreau, 28, were dropped in February after a judge found the Crown had not presented enough evidence against them at the preliminary inquiry. So let's see, this guy gets off the train. These cops apparently have some interaction with him. He ends up fucking dead. And there was no way to put together any kind of case and enough evidence to prove that they obviously had some cause in the fact that this man ended up dead, right? As a result of their interaction, right? No, that can't ever happen. But think about any other situation outside of outside of when police were involved, right? And forces of the state, it wouldn't require a whole lot of evidence, and you'd be thrown in the fucking jail if it were you or anyone else under this exact same circumstance where you killed another human being, right? No, regardless of circumstance. New Brunswick Public Prosecution Services requested a judicial review by the Court of Queen's Bench, seeking to have the decision by Judge Anne Dugas Horseman overruled, arguing she failed to consider all the relevant evidence at the preliminary inquiry and committed a jurisdictional error. Dugas Horseman had ruled the prosecution failed to meet the threshold that the 2 constables engaged in an illegal act when they attempted to arrest Vigneault. What the hell happened during this interaction between these police officers and this man that was completely innocent? But what was the result? What was the consequences why this man was killed? And how in the fuck wouldn't it be considered illegal? Like I say, listen, I've said this in many videos in the past, okay? You know, when you're talking about people that have the power of so-called authority, or at least that pretense, they just make the rules up as they go along. It's just, we live under a fucking system of basically rule by edict. A dictatorial regime runs this country, and their mindless enforcers fucking carry out their orders, and they carry favor. That's really what happens in this country. People don't fucking want to accept it. They want to fucking close their eyes and plug their ears and fucking zip their mouth up and just pretend that none of this shit is reality. But it is. But it is. Court of Queen's Bench Justice Tracy DeWare heard arguments in Bathurst in late August with Bulger Boudreau and about 24 of Vigneault's relatives and friends in the courtroom. DeWare could uphold the lower court decision, who would end the prosecution, or commit Bulger of Beresford and Boudreau of Dunlop to trial. Bulger and Boudreau were each facing charge of manslaughter with a weapon, assault with a weapon, and unlawfully pointing a firearm. They were both suspended with pay from the police force after the charges were laid. Now, I seen the subsequent follow-up, and I'll post a link to that as well as this article in the description of the video below, No, the charges aren't going to be pushed forward. So no, this case isn't going to continue on further. These guys get to walk off scot-free. So they were paid for however long it took this. So it was back in 2015. So I don't know what, couple years that they were on paid fucking vacation, right? And now all the charges have been wiped. The slate's been wiped clean. And they get to go back to being the authoritarian control freak fucking enforcers of the state, what they were. You know, they got to murder a man, maybe a father, you know, maybe a brother, maybe a husband, maybe a son, right? Well, definitely a son, right? But I mean, someone an uncle, you know, a human being that was doing nothing illegal died as a result of his encounter with these authoritarian pieces of shit. But is there going to be any justice? No. I mean, time and time and time and time again. How many times has this happened, Canada? How many times have you seen this, witness for yourself? And no, it ain't just in the U.S. Now, Canada, yes, to a lesser extent. We do have 10 times less of a population than the Americans, and we don't have a culture of rebellion, a culture of, independence and individual freedom like the U.S. does. So I know a lot of people say, oh, it's a lot worse down in the U.S., but it's just as fucking rampant in this country. The difference is the people in the media in this country, well, look at how they report it, right? Look at how they're reporting it, right? I mean, a lot of people can be like, well, the guy must have been just a fucking, I don't know, he must have done something wrong, right? He must have done something wrong. That's the problem with Canada. A lot of Canadians have a serious fucking case of Stockholm Syndrome thanks to the education system, thanks to the indoctrination that's been jammed in their fucking head, right? And the overwhelming power of authority that they subjugate themselves in this country, right? So whether it's from the fucking Queen, right? All that shit written on our fucking bills, or the Prime Minister, or the premiers, we have in Canada, well, not we, I sure as fuck don't, but a lot of Canadians, they have this reverence. They are the fucking most indoctrinated bunch of statists on the planet. Well, I mean, maybe Chinese people, maybe some of these other communist countries, they might be a little bit more subjective to this kind of shit than Canadians. But like I said, I don't know. Canadians would give you a run for the money. Let me tell you. Some of these fucking communist people, or some of these people that live under massively oppressive regimes all around the world, yeah, trust me, Canadians, there's a lot of Canadians that give you a run for your money and just how fucking mindlessly indoctrinated and obedient serfs and slaves that they can be. That's one thing that I think Canada in the modern era, in the modern age, can say with a fair amount of clarity and a fair amount of accuracy is, yeah, there's a lot of really good slaves, serfs, and subjects in this country. Hey, any of you ruling class, any of you people want to come take over this country? You got millions and millions of loyal, obedient serfs and slaves that will do whatever you ask, whatever you wish, because you put forth and present to them that you're their authority. Proof's in the pudding, folks. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.